and you can see where it is. And you can actually click on this and drag it up, and when you click, it'll make a point, and then you can sort of drag it up and down, but I sort of end up a lot of times dragging these things this way because I want to make a steeper curve, and then I want to take the really dark shadows and make them dark. So what I'm doing is I'm increasing the local contrast in the shadow area, okay? And then if I want to see before and after, I can click on this thing. So there's before, there's after, okay? So that's why I like doing it this way, because I can go in and customize the curve for this particular image, okay? And I guess you could do the same thing with brightness contrast, but with curves, you have more control over what you're doing with a particular part of the curve. The other thing is, usually on these things, you can actually make, you think you'd be throwing away your highlights there, but it actually just adds to the contrast if you do something like that. Okay. So now I can go and do highlight detail. And what I might want to do, since the sky is pretty flat, is just type a G for gradient and just plop a gradient in here for, to get a little bit more detail in the sky. Okay, and then I can, so what that did is it just put a little gradient on my mask, okay? And then I can go in with a brush now and tweak that if I want. So now sometimes I find that 7% is a bit too much, so I could type 0.3 and just get 3%, and then I could darken these areas a little bit, and it doesn't happen quite so quickly. And then I'm just using the space bar to scroll there where I want to scroll. So we'll add a little definition to these guys. Maybe go back to this one. Okay, now the other thing I found is that trying to capture waves is pretty important, or the way the light hits the water. And if you're out on the water a lot, you realize that there's like a number of different ways that ripples can look, and they're pretty cool. So I might, it might work to just use this mid-tone contrast one here. Yeah, see how that sort of brings out the light reflections. But if I want to, specifically work on those waves, what I might do is just do a custom curve. Okay, so I could, these are all sort of generic curves, but I could just put the thing there, and then make a curve in the middle of those two adjustment layers. Okay, so I could do, a new adjustment layer of type curves, or I could also pick one from here. But I have a little action that does that. So if I do Command F3, it gives me the curves dialog. And guess what? The old curves dialog is still in Photoshop. And if you access it from an action, you can actually get it. Does anybody know if there's a little, if you don't want to use this thing, if you want to double click here and get the old curves dialog, does anybody know if there's a little keyboard sequence to do that? Don't? Oh, okay, I was hoping maybe you knew about that. Because I haven't found one yet, but what I have found is if I access it via my old action, that code is still in there and I get the old curves dialog, which I like a little bit better. So if I want to do a custom curve for just the water, I can come down here and move the cursor up and down. And when you use this dialog, you always get the eyedropper tool by default. You don't have to click on this little thing up here. And so you can sort of see that, that water, all those values are right in that area, okay? So if I stick a center point, right in the middle of that area, and then make an S-curve around that, okay, it really makes my water more dramatic, okay? Now, whenever I do this kind of thing, what I always do is I over-dramatize. So I make it more dramatic than I want, and then I say OK, and so I've got this new adjustment layer, and the mask is white, but if you type Command-I, it just inverts the mask, okay? Then you got black, and then you could just go back to your brush and just paint that in, the amount that you need. So if you always make the curve a little bit more dramatic than what you need, then you can just paint it in till you get the amount of drama that you want. And people are always coming into my gallery saying, "Wow, you've really captured those waves. That's the way they really look," but then they don't buy a print. They just, I say, "Great," Okay, so now that I've got this nice little mask, and sometimes it's nice to look at the mask because you realize, that there is actually water down here, but I just missed it, Okay, so again, it's just Option click to toggle that. Okay, but now that I've already got that mask, if I want to, change my color on the waves a little bit, then what I can do now is I can do Command F4 and get a hue saturation adjustment layer. And again, I can do Command F4 because of the little artist keys, but you can set those up. If you guys want, when I'm done here, I'll show you how to set those up. Okay, I forgot. What you want to do is when you get to this point, you want to say use previous layer to create a clipping mask, and then that hue saturation layer will be indented a little bit, which means that it's going to piggyback on top of this same mask. So if I go in to my blues and I saturate my blues, you'll notice that these guys get saturated, but these blues up here don't, okay? So I could saturate those a bit, or I could go into, like say cyan, and I can see, well, what happens if I saturate cyans? Doesn't really make a big difference. And I could adjust the hue. Okay, I'm still not too happy with that background, so let's see what this one does to it. So this one is just an S-curve, which I use for just increasing mid-tone contrast. And sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it isn't. It's not really going to help with the background. It doesn't really help much at all. So I think what I'm going to do for the background is I'm just going to go ahead and make another curve. And I could even call it, background, if I want to remember what I used that one for. Okay, so again, I can see where these values are. Okay, so they're sort of up here. Those guys are up there. These guys are down here. So probably if I put the center point right about there, now I want to make it a little bit darker because I want to bring out some of those clouds that are in the sky. And actually that works pretty well. If I wanted to be a little bit more dramatic about it, what I could do is make it a little bit darker and then even add a little bit more contrast. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at this island back here and these mountains here. Okay, so now what I want to do is make a mask just to apply those. So one thing that you can do